What is good, YouTube? It is me back with another Sunday sketch, and I did have a request for sort of a how-to on the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the champions of Hyrule, as it were. So I thought I would just, I prepped my image here a little bit, and I'm just gonna run through some of the official, promotional art and sort of give you guys an idea of the process I use to, look at each of the characters and uh, and go from there. This process, by the way, you can pretty much apply to anything. So, but first, we'll go ahead and start with Rivali, and I found it interesting because his promotional art um, is blue like this, but in game he's definitely really dark. He's like a blackbird almost. Um, but his promotional artwork is really bright blue, and I don't know if that's an in-engine thing with lighting and stuff. And he's supposed to be blue, or if he is black, and what they did here was take what do you call that, like ambient color, because they did the bright blue or the blue swishes in the back. Anyways, so this whole idea started on my Rivali video. Somebody asked if I could do a how-to, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and break it down here now. So first, I want to go ahead and take all of these and put them in a folder so that I don't mess with them. And I'll do this on a new layer. Okay, so now that I'm not in danger of ruining my photoshopped pieces here, so one of the first things you want to look at when you are drawing a character, copying a character, what have you, is you want to look at their pose, right? So in this case, Rivali, if you look at it, there are a few landmarks to look at. One of which is birds always have this really pronounced breastbone, and I know that red is not showing up against the red of his chest piece. So you know what? We're gonna do Rivali in yellow. There we go, a nice yellow. So he's got this breastbone, and birds actually have a pretty pronounced breastbone as well. And then you can see his shoulder pads here and here, and then that will help suggest that, along with his armor, kind of helps suggest where his collarbone would be. His neck is obvious there, and then his head is right there. So from this, we can sort of determine where the rib cage would be, and we can block it in like that, right? So basically, I'm just breaking this down into body parts, basic shapes, things like that. First, I want to do body parts so I make sure I get the pose right. And you can also see Rivali's hip is here, his belt is slung all the way up here, so that suggests that he's actually got a tilt to his hips in this pose, as you can see here, and then that is where, that's not where his hip is, but that's where his, well, I guess the hip kind of goes up there. So you got that there, and then that would also, if you look at where his arm is here, because you want to have that counterbalance on your body, right? So just kind of determining what the pose is, and then his leg is going to come down here, and then this leg is there. And of course he's got these big old. This is where I'll start blocking in shapes, because his hand is this big old Popeye. He's got this big old Popeye arm, right? Um, and you train yourself to do this kind of analysis, this kind of thinking enough, then it becomes a lot easier to just kind of eyeball it. And I do admit I didn't do as well a job as I could have in the actual Rivali video of breaking it down like this, but it was kind of just a base sketch, and I'll step up my game in future videos. But right, so you're kind of just breaking it down into basic shapes. Beak is a lot of Rivali's head is a triangle, because he's got triangle here, triangle here, triangle here. He's got varying triangles, and of course, don't forget his little, I don't know, armpit wings, whatever those are. And he's got that there and there, and so from this image here, just let me just. From that, you can pretty much tell what Rivali's doing, what his pose is, and I could draw the whole thing just based on this sketch here. So let's bring this back. He's got his little hair tie things, or braids, sorry. So now obviously you can see what I'm doing here is pretty much just tracing, but the basic shapes and everything, they're still there. And that's the important part. And it's not bad to trace necessarily, especially when you're practicing. But you know, if I wanted to do this same pose and not be tracing, I can do that, probably. So I can take that basic shape, or the look of these shapes, and I can determine, okay, so the pose is kind of like this, and he's got the one arm goes here, one arm comes out here. He's got his chest kind of puffed out, and then he's got leg, leg, neck, and then 1, 2, 3 dingleberries. And it's a very similar, like you can see that I still have captured most of the pose without tracing or anything. And from there, you know, I can block in how big his hands are. And then I can layer on top of that and go from there. But it's very important just to get that initial base drawing down, right? So then on top of that, you know, I like to fade out my layers. Those of you who've been watching me for a bit, you know that I do like to fade out my layers. And then I'll go in on my fake Rivali here, and I'll determine, okay, so his beak is here. And then I do want to refer back to my reference. Because even if you are not tracing, you should still always use reference whenever you can. Okay, so he's got his head tilted a little more than what I drew here, so let's move the eye up like that. And go back for comparison. It's not bad, it could be tilted more. And then he's got big, thick lines. And these amazing, also wing-shaped eyebrows. And there you go. And then gonna just sort of loosely feather that out because he's got feathers. It makes sense. What happened? There we go. Something clicked on something. And there you have it. I mean, that's basically all I did. Was I looked at my reference, I set up my shapes, and I built up from there. It doesn't look exactly like Rivali here, as you can see, but you know, my drawing from before didn't look exactly like him either. I think so. One thing that I think I forgot here was determining which direction his head was pointed in, right? So that's one thing you want to make sure you don't skip that step either. Determining, so okay, his chin is like here. Of course, he's got a weird bird head, so determining where his chin is more like determining where like the bottom of his beak is. And so his head is going to kind of tilt this way, which is going to end up putting his eye more like here and then here. So he's going to have these big eyebrows like that. So that's that. I'll move on to the next guy. He's all smiles. I forget his name. I keep wanting to say Darunia, because that's the, you know, the Ocarina of Time character, but I feel like his name is definitely not Darunia. Let me see. Oh, his name is Daruk. There we go. So let's move on to Daruk. So we're going to zoom out a little bit. Now Daruk, his body shapes, because he's a Goron, you know, he doesn't wear a lot of clothes, and we'll do him in yellow again, as well. He doesn't wear a lot of clothes, and so you can see a lot of how he's shaped, right? Which is really helpful to us in determining body shape and proportions and stuff. So his hips are clearly down here somewhere, and his chest, or his shoulder line rather, is way up here, which makes finding the curve of his body a little difficult. But if you look at the image, you can see these, and that usually is from the rib cage. So from that, we can determine that if this is the bottom of the rib cage, then his ribs, or his rib cage is right in here, kind of that shape, right? Then you see his pectorals here and here, so you can assume that his sternum is somewhere in the middle, and then he's got the clavicle or the collarbone along that inclination, right? So because of that, and actually this looks wrong to me, the rib cage, because I think it might come out even further than that, but that's the only, it might come out to here. No, because see, I don't think it would work that way. It's a little tricky because I don't exactly know Goron physiology. I'm just guessing based on human anatomy, I guess. So in any case, the spine would be in the back of the rib cage. So we're going to put it across from the sternum. But first we're going to go ahead and put his head in. And then take his spine from there, right? And then put in his pelvis, however that's shaped. We'll just sort of assume that it's shaped that way-ish. So that's a general estimation of his head, his rib cage or torso, and his pelvis. That's all I've been doing for any character that I'm drawing. I want to start with that. Again, Daruk is a little difficult because his proportions are so different from humans that it's difficult to figure out what I'm working with exactly. But he definitely has some of the same pieces of anatomy, so it's certainly not impossible to come up with an approximation of the Goron physique. And then if we remove it, we've got pardon me. If we remove it, we've got an estimation of what his shape would be like. And so again, we can come in here and we know he's got a big round belly, so we'll put that in. This shoulder's probably up a little bit because of how he's holding that arm. And then we know his fist is enormous, and he's got these big old Popeye arms also. So we've got to kind of approximate that. And he has these bracelets which kind of breaks up the line from your, and covers up your wrist, which makes it a whole lot easier to draw, because I feel like wrists are the hardest part of the hand to draw for me, because of just figuring out how they're attached and all of that is kind of a pain. And then from here, from this step, really, it's just all about knowing, enough about the anatomy to work with. Because again, it may not be perfect, and with a lot more practice, it definitely could be. for the purposes of, and if I were doing like a finished sketch, I would definitely want to practice it just as much as I can, in order to have it as close to perfect as I possibly could. And this is gonna sound a little pervy, but when you're taking um, art classes and anatomy classes and stuff, it definitely helps to you know imagine them without clothes first, right? So I drew in his pectoral muscles and all of that kind of stuff, and I'm doing all of this without putting any clothes on him yet, because he has that big scarf and everything. So, but it does help for you to figure out the anatomy and make sure that you get it exactly right, or at least exactly where you want it to be, whether it's exactly right or not. So I haven't really drawn any of his clothes on except for the bracelets, because that's the bracelets kind of help define his shape more than his like this chain thing. You don't need that. And I put the bracelets in the arms in the wrong place. And apparently I also made him a lot skinnier than he actually is, which is interesting. But it's the same process. And so from here I would go back and I'd look at my reference and I'd be like, okay, well, he's actually a lot fatter than that, so his butt comes out to here. I think part of the problem was that I was using this pelvis line to kind of in lieu of his loincloth. So I ended up using that to dictate where when in reality the pelvis is inside the body. So it should be inside any of your body lines, because it's your body lines shouldn't go inside the pelvis, and that's what I had done. And then I did his arms, not all wrong. I mean, they're in the right position, but not the right shape or weight. Ugh. Pardon me. Mother Nature tries to kill me every year around this time. It's spring for you. And then he's got these giant fists. So, and I'm gonna go ahead and refer back to my reference, and that's a lot better. That's a lot better. Thumb is in the wrong place. That's one of those like minutia things that you can fix as you're going along. And his knuckles are actually up here, but I kind of only approximated the hand, so there you go. Let's fix up the other arm. And again, always referring back to the reference, right? Now, I'm not going to get into like how to draw a fist or any of that, because that's really complicated. Or, well, it can be complicated or it can be really simple, depending on what style you're going for, I guess. But this same breakdown of you're looking for basic shapes, you're looking for the lines of the body, the lines of action, to see what the body's doing, what the pose is, where the weight is distributed. And then once you have that down, then you can start adding stuff on top, right? Also, for those of you who don't know, there's a little bit of exciting news. The first DLC for the game is on its way. So that's pretty exciting. I don't know. I definitely want to try it, get my hands on it, and see what's going on. But it may be down the road a little bit, because I think what I want is more story. And this isn't gonna be like a story DLC, so it's just gonna have some like challenge modes and stuff. Although the hard mode, I'm sure, will appeal to those speedrunners out there who are giving that a go. Yes, I will eat you. Anyways, so that's pretty much that. And again, I can do that same process for. I made him look really, really messed up with the face. But the process is the same. Again, it's finding your body's lines, determining what the pose is, using your layers. At least if you're doing digital art, then yeah, using your layers. If you're not, then you can still do the same idea, right? Because I'll do Zelda, right? Because she's got that nice official promo art, and I'll find, okay, her chest is there, her hips are along this line, so she's actually got a bit of a curve to her line of action there. And it's a pretty static pose, although it still gives you a good deal of information. But I think that the information is conveyed more through her expression than her pose, because her pose is a little generic. So you can see there, I've confirmed the pose. I'm going to build in her rib cage because that's going to be very important for determining placement of her, anatomy, and determine sort of where her hips are at, because hips don't lie. I'm actually going to move this over so that I can look at my reference at the same time as I'm drawing it. Not over there. We'll We'll put you right here, other Zelda. And so again, I mean, I can do this on one layer. If and if you're, drawing on physical media, it's not that much harder to do. You just have to, you do have to draw lightly so that your underdrawing doesn't overtake the rest of your piece, right? But you can totally, and I'm on the same layer. You can totally come in here and make a little Zelda sketch. Her ears seem low to me. I'm used to ears being, of course, that's an interesting clue because most of the time, the top of the ear, where the top of the ear attaches, will line up to your eye in some way. And so then, as people, or as a human, your ear would probably come up like that, and that looks fine to me. But as a Hylian, I guess their ears flare out a lot more. So, or Hylian. Hylian, whatever. She's got very practical princess hair this go round. It's all nice and tucked back and well kempt and whatnot. And see, then you just erase that line very carefully, and it almost looks like Princess Zelda, kind of, except with really, really messed up eyes. So I'm gonna actually redo those eyes. I have too many feelings to express. With my crazy eye. Don't remember where I heard that. I think it was an anime or something. I have too many feelings. Or I feel too much or something. I don't remember. I just remember thinking it was really funny and odd. This is always the tough part for me with eyes, is making them look like they're looking in the same direction. And like at the same level, and like they belong to the same person. That's a pretty decent Princess Zelda eye, and then of course this, you definitely want to look back to your source material. Always use a reference. Even if you're drawing your own stuff, this you still want to use a reference because Um, you know, you still want to reference anatomy and pose and all that kind of stuff, and eventually you can get good enough to the point where you don't really need that reference material as much, but that usually comes after years and years and years of practice. There we go. Now let's make her mouth a little more petite. And hey, definitely getting closer to Zelda. There we go. This side needs to be open more. And her nose is a little more pointed. And there you have it. Honestly, from this point, no matter who or what you're drawing, it's just a matter of, okay, looking at my reference, her eyebrows are like here and here. And her eyes are here and here. And then her nose is down here. And there you go. And that's all I do. That's all I do. Just refer back to the reference. And again, this is not a perfect looking Zelda, but it does look like a version. It could be a version of Zelda, if not the Breath of the Wild Zelda. I think she's smiling more, so that's one thing I could adjust. Oop. Give her a Joker face. No. It's an even more subtle smile than that, and that's annoying because that means I gotta use tiny little adjustments. And itsy bitsy baby adjustment, value changes and such. Yeah, so more like that. And that part was just, okay, decide shape. Emulate shape. Refine shape. Put in a little shadow. there's lots of things you can do with it from there, and you know you can even like modify it to however you want, because that's one of the things that they do with Zelda is they keep changing her. And so if I wanted to take this same look, I can establish, or if I want to take this kind of Zelda, right, and like rearrange her a little bit, I can take this and let's do more of a chibi art style. So the eyes are going to be bigger. But we're still going to take that immediate eye shape as best we can. And she's got these big eyebrows. Put her barrette in her hair. And you end up with, yeah, that could be Princess Zelda. I mean, does it look different? Yeah, it looks real different, but it looks like it could be Princess Zelda. It's got some of the same features. The hair is similar. The eyebrows are a little exaggerated. The mouth is obviously a little exaggerated. I did a number with her different features, but it looks like it could be at least based on that same Princess Zelda. It also looks like if you took the nose away, it could be that one of that Muppet with the you know, with the big lips. And the hair. I forget who that Muppet is, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so I guess my point is don't feel bad if it doesn't end up looking exactly like you want it to look. Just keep practicing, or if you want to do it in a different style, that's fine too. People do it all the time. That's unfortunately why we ended up with things like SD Gundam, which was not great, but it was an attempt at doing something different. So, look back at my reference. Look at that. Look at these. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. And it's the same with anybody. Oh my gosh, she has the most amazing nose. I mean, look at that nose, and I love this nose because it's and I'm gonna do her in this. I'm gonna do her in this color here. This nose is just so angular. Her whole face. So I'm just gonna break down her face, not her whole body this time. Gerudo have really sharp, pronounced features, right? So we got her head. That's her chin. But they've got really sharp, and they always have, to an extent. I mean, Ganondorf had an amazing nose also. In some iterations, and that's more or less carried over. And she's got that long neck. And she's killing it. Her cheekbones are up here. Her eye socket is like that shape. Honestly, if it weren't for the nose, she could totally be some kind of crazy model, right? So we're going to take those features, and we're going to just draw on top of them. An important thing to keep note of is that the top lip in these sorts of things is usually more flattened, whereas the bottom lip is rounder. Right? Of course, I put the lips in the wrong place. So her top lip is there, her bottom lip is there. That seems weird. Let me look at I'll drag this over so we can get a better idea of what we're dealing with here. Oh man, she is wearing too much lipstick. Okay, so then we are looking at an almost absurd pair of lips that come up to here. Like that. Then her beautiful eyes. Super stylized, like, fire eyebrows. kind of face paint. And you see, I'm doing this even in, I'm doing this in white. I don't have to, you don't have to draw with black or white or whatever. You can use colors, you can use, just as long as you get those basic shapes. And she's got the hair. And now we have a really psychedelic Urbosa. Alright, let's see. How are we doing for time? We're getting close there. But again, this is all I do. For those of you joining me, all I do when I'm drawing the characters is I establish the pose using as many of their body landmarks as I can. Then I use my reference and my pose to draw the character on top. Then when I'm painting, that's another. The painting process is a little bit different. Like if I wanted to, I'll do a little demo of painting here. Let's take this Zelda, right? So what I want to do here is I'm going to try and leave this intact. I don't paint in real life yet. It is something that I could definitely work on, and I would love to do a painting of something at some point. Like a physical, actual painting, just to kind of get it under my belt. But for digital painting, one of the things that I do is I establish these big old color blocks, right? And this is going to be your darkest color, right? And then from there, you're going to be establishing lights and darks using your colors. For this, there's obviously a very bright white light reflecting off of everything in Breath of the Wild promo art. But I'm gonna there's warmth here too, so I'm gonna try and capture that. And we're gonna fade this out so that I can still see the area I'm working with, but it doesn't overshadow me. And we're gonna paint in, and I like to use watercolor brushes in Clip Art Studio, which is the program I'm using, because they blend nicely. And I'm just going to establish where my light's all coming from, and then blend out from there. And then there is that bright white just like directly on her cheek. And a little up here on her brow. I'm gonna try and blend that. Stay in line with her cheekbone. We're going to add a little pink. because she does have a little bit of a blush. And again, just try to blend that in, right? Let's block out the eye a little bit. And she's got these beautiful green eyes, or blue-green almost. It's probably supposed to be blue because she's Zelda. But they look, looking close up at these here, it definitely has a blue-green tint to it. And now for this, for the black lines and for the sharper lines, really, I like to use the oil paint brushes. Because they don't blend as much, but you can layer them nicely. To get different thicknesses and thinnesses. And they do blend a little bit as well. Just not as much as the watercolor. Just clean up that because it didn't really turn out the way I wanted it to. I'm gonna take a pencil tool here actually. And then use the watercolor. What's up, baby girl? My cat's meowing for my attention here, so. And that just takes practice. Again, I'm not really happy with how this area came out, but I do like the eye. So, I may just erase it and start over, that kind of thing. It's a lot of trial and error. And then trying to capture the style. That Rivali video, I kept I kept a very loose, sketchy look to it to try and match the sort of stylized paint strokes and stuff that go on, and I think it came out pretty good. But again, I could definitely use some adjustments on the anatomy. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the video, kind of a breakdown of my process when I'm tackling characters, especially ones that I'm not as familiar with. And I look forward to hanging out with you all again next week for Mother's Day. I actually got something special planned, so um, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want there. And if you want to see something, end of the month, I do my Fan Art Fusions streams. And if you want to see any kind of characters or styles mashed up, I did a nice Yu-Gi-Oh styled Earthworm Jim last Sunday or last month, and I've done a few other ones before that that were a lot of fun. So if you want to see a weird mashup of styles, like I don't know, uh, maybe that little round head kid from Shaolin Showdown drawn in Kirby, although that wouldn't be too hard, I feel like. But you get the idea. Feel free to leave a comment for that in the description, or not in the description, leave it in the comments section below as well. And I will catch you all next time. Take it easy.